In every one of us is a poor person. There's still a poor person inside me. There's also a middle class person, and the middle class persons want security. They want that steady paycheck. And then there's a rich person. And they're all inside of us, except that it's not taught. You're taught to go to school, get a job, and get a paycheck. You're not taught to how to get rich. If you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my rich dad refused to pay me. He said the paycheck was one of the most damaging things you could take in your life. He says the moment you take a paycheck, you're an employee, and that's the mindset. So my rich dad never paid me. It drove my poor dad, government employee, nuts. You gotta pay people, you gotta pay people. And Rich Dad was not saying that the paycheck was bad. He says he didn't want to be a slave to money. So as an entrepreneur, if Rich Dad folded, I just started another company. I don't need a paycheck. I don't need anybody to take care of me. If my government doesn't like me, I move to another country because they need entrepreneurs there. So the entrepreneur is not so much the business. The entrepreneur is really the mindset and the skill sets and the different set of rules. You see, I don't operate, small business does not operate in the same rules as big business. Entrepreneur is a mindset first, a skill set, and rules. And depending upon whether you're an employee or a small business, the rules are different. The mindsets are different. The skill sets are different.
You could say one thing to somebody who's never been an entrepreneur and they're thinking about making the leap of faith into becoming an entrepreneur. What could you tell them?
Well, I'll just tell them the same thing that happened to me. My last paycheck, I still remember it clearly. It was one of the worst and the best days of my life. And I was in Puerto Rico. I was working for Xerox, and my boss gave me my last, it wasn't a paycheck, it was a bonus check. I think it was about $30,000, taxable, it's the only problem with that. So I got this check and I went, holy mackerel. So I was excited, but I was also disturbed. And so this other guy comes up to me, his name was John, and John says to me, he says, you're gonna be back. I said, why? He says, because you're gonna fail. I looked at him and said, look, few expletive words, because that's what he did. He left Xerox, failed, and he came back. And I said, look, you failed and you came back, but I'm gonna fail and I'm never coming back. And that's the attitude. Do you know what I mean? If you say, well, if I fail, I'll go back to mommy and daddy, then that's what you'll do. So if you fail, that's when I became an entrepreneur, because I had no money. I had no money for years. I didn't have a paycheck. But that's what my rich dad encouraged me to do. He says, when you don't have this paycheck, you get hungrier, smarter, and it's a test of your character. Will you become a crook? Will you become dishonest? Will you cheat and steal? Or will you become a better human being? So really, that's the benefit of becoming an entrepreneur, is you really find out who you are when you don't have anything. So you always have to look at the big picture. Too many people look at, well, what's going to happen to me? When you look at the big picture, you're also going to know that when something bad happens, something good's going to happen. But you got to prepare for whatever is coming. If you think next 20 years will be like the last 20 years, you're going to get creamed. When you and I go to the supermarket and we buy a carton of milk, we always check for the expiration date. But most people do not check for the expiration date on their brains. Instead of get out of debt, I get into debt. I just refinanced $300 million in debt. I went from 5% to 2.5% interest. I made a fortune. Every month, more money comes in because my cost of money has gone down. So while some financial experts are saying get out of debt, I'm saying learn how to use debt. See, when I came back from in Vietnam in January of '73, the first thing my rich dad said to me was go to school to learn how to invest in real estate. It wasn't real estate, it was how to use debt and taxes. Debt and taxes make the rich richer. Debt and taxes make the poor, the middle class, poor. So all the rich guys who are doctors and lawyers or, those guys, they're getting creamed and they don't know why.
Doctors are getting creamed.
Oh yeah, they make more money, but the take home is less.
Sure.
My doctor just yelled at me, he's happy, he says, oh, guess what, I finally made $1 million. And I said, yeah, this was just 3 weeks ago. And so I said, yeah, well, how much you pay in tax? He says, $750,000 in taxes. So his net was about $400,000. That's not bad. But when I make $1 million, I keep $1 million. And the reason is because I don't make it by working for money. See, if you work for money, you're taxed. So that's why lesson number 1 in Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the rich don't work for money. What we do instead is we create businesses as entrepreneurs. We acquire real estate. I don't invest in the stock market. Okay? So the reason is because as entrepreneurs, I have more control over my income, how much I make, and how much I pay in taxes. And because I'm an entrepreneur as well as an investor in real estate, I pay 0 tax. So every time I make, let's say, $1 million as an entrepreneur, I immediately invested in real estate and I have a 4-to-1 step up. So I put $1 million in real estate, I get $4 million from the bank. That's why I love banks. But the banks are screwing everybody else, terrible. But it's good for me.
That's why you say when you print, it's good for you, but when you print, it's bad for people that work for money.
Because when you print, savers get creamed and people who work for money get creamed. When they print, debtors get rich. You see, debt and taxes make the rich richer, and debt and taxes make the poor middle class poorer. When we have obsolete ideas, we get obsolete results. So what's happening for most people, the idea of going to school, getting a job, working hard, saving money, getting out of debt, buying your house because it's an asset, investing for the long term, is obsolete. The world has changed. The world changed in 1971 when President Nixon took us off the gold standard and money became debt.
What if we get rid of school? Then what would happen? Would it be better if we had no educational system at all?
No, I'm saying education is more important before. It's just obsolete. There's Moore's Law, which states information doubles every 18 months. In other words, everything's obsolete 18 months. So, and this is just a recent phenomenon. So when you come out of school, you're already obsolete. And that's why I'm the old guy, I meet my friends who went to Harvard. I went to Harvard. I said, yeah, that was how long, 50 years ago? Today, the banks are charging you interest to save money. In other words, banks don't want your money because they printed too much of it. And that's why there's this bubbles in stocks and bubbles in real estate and all this. People are dumping the cash because, as I said in here, savers are losers and cash is trash. And yet people are, well, I want a high-paying job. Well, that's an obsolete idea. Get out of debt is an obsolete idea. You should learn how to get into debt, how to use debt to get rich, and they'll never teach you about taxes. The reason the 1% is way up here and the 99% are going this way is because when you print money, 2 things happen: inflation and taxes. It's crushing you. And any entrepreneur thinks, I'm just going to make money, I'm going to start a business and make a lot of money because of what we talk about. They really have got to smell the roses, man. That's not what the real entrepreneurs are doing. Most entrepreneurs, there's 28 million small business owners in America. 24 million are what are one-person entrepreneurs. They're called non-employee entrepreneurs. So and that's what happens is when people don't really understand what an entrepreneur does. So most big people are self-employed, but they're not really entrepreneurs. The self-employed pay the highest taxes of all, and nobody tells them that. Yeah, it's also called the entrepreneurial spirit, but what we were actually talking about was there's no such thing as a bad economy. There's external, you and I, we all have an external economy, but we also have an internal economy, and the willpower is to change our internal economy. So for me, I can see the good and I can see the bad, and I don't really give a damn because I'm going to be rich anyway. But a poor person with a poor personal economy, all they're going to see is a bad economy because they don't know how to make money in any economy. And a middle class person, they have a middle class economy. What they want is a nice house and a steady paycheck and the job and the car. And so when you take their job away, to them, that's disaster. Well, since an entrepreneur doesn't have a job anyway, it's no big deal. So all I'm saying to people, and it's what Bucky Fuller taught me, there's always 2 sides, you know what I mean? Unity is plural, at minimum 2. So if you think the economy is bad, it's because your economy is bad. If you think that steady, employment is important, then you'll see an economy without jobs. Your economy versus the external economy.
What you control versus what you can't control?
I can control. Yeah, it's called an internal focus
Mm-hmm.
versus an external focus. So the real entrepreneur has an internal focus. That if they fall down, they say, "Oh, this is good, because I'm going to go up higher." You know, the average person will fall down and say, "Oh, I'm going to take some Prozac." Or somebody has a mistake. Oh, the mistakes don't matter. Well, mistakes matter. It means you didn't know something. But a real entrepreneur, whether they fall down, they always can go up. They can stand back up and go higher. And no matter what happens to them, they get stronger and better and smarter and happier. But a person with a weak internal mindset.
Everything was done to try to learn how to become a better basketball player. Everything. And so when you have that point of view, then literally the world becomes your library to help you to become better at your craft.
So because you know what you want, the world's giving you exactly the information you need to become better at it.
Because you know what you're looking for.
So many guys tell stories about your work ethic.
Yeah.
What was really your work ethic like, and for how long did you stay disciplined?
Well, I mean, every day. I mean, since 20 years. I mean, it was an everyday process, and trying to figure out strengths and weaknesses. For example, jumping ability. Man, my vertical was a 40, wasn't a 46 or a 45. My hands are big, but they're not massive. Right? So you got to figure out ways to strengthen them, so your hands are strong enough to be able to palm a ball and do the things that you need to do. Quickness, I was quick, but not insanely quick. I was fast, but not ridiculously fast. Right? So I had to rely on skill a lot more. I had to rely on angles a lot more. I had to study the game a lot more. And but I enjoyed it though. So like from the time I can remember when I started watching the game, I studied the game, and it just never changed. It's a good separation for me, emotionally, to be able to put myself in a place where at practice or when I'm training or during games, I switch my mind to something else. I switch my mode into something else, right? For me, it's the equivalent of Maximus Decimus Meridius and Gladiator picking up the dirt, smelling the dirt. It's go time, right? So that was my mental switch. It was like an actor getting ready for a film. You got to put yourself in that cage. When you're in that cage, you are that character. And then when you leave there, it's something completely different. But when I'm in that cage, bro, don't touch me, don't talk to me. Just leave me alone.
How did you get mentally and emotionally so strong where it doesn't bother you?
Well, you got to look at the reality of the situation. Like for me, it's not, you kind of got to get over yourself. It's not about you, man. Like, okay, you feel embarrassed. You're not that important. Like, get over yourself.
That's where you go.
Get over yourself, right? Like you're worried about how people may perceive you, and like you're walking around and it's embarrassing because you shot 5 air balls. Get over yourself, right? And then after that, it's okay, well, why did those air balls happen? Got it. High school, year before, we played 35 games, max, right? Week in between, spaced out. Plenty of time to rest. In the NBA, it's back to back to back to back to back to back to back. I didn't have the legs. So you look at the shot, every shot was online. Every shot was online, but every shot was short. Right? I got to get stronger. I got to train differently. The weight training program that I'm doing, I got to tailor it for an 82-game season so that when the playoffs come around, my legs are stronger and that ball gets there. So I look at it with rationale. Say, okay, well, the reason why I shot air balls is because my legs aren't there. I go, well, next year they'll be there. That was it.
Done. Were there some names that you looked at and says, these 3 guys are as crazy as I am?
At the time, I deal with what I've referred to as Goat Mountain. I went to Goat Mountain and I talked to Magic, Michael, Bird, Hakeem Olajuwon, Jerry West, Oscar Robinson, Bill Russell, So I would talk to them. What did you do? What were your experiences? Michael in particular, he's become my big brother. He's been my big brother since I first came in the league. And what was that process like? So I went to them and started understanding the ins and outs of the game and how they approach things and their level of detail and obsessiveness. And that's what I did. The players that had that passion, but weren't willing to commit their entire lives to doing that, right? It's a choice, right? You have other things, you have family, you have all these other things that you have to do. The game can't really be your number one priority. And so I was just looking at that like, man, this is gonna be fun.
If I'm buddies with you from high school, if I'm a cousin of yours, what happened to our relationship? How did that gravitate when you went into the league and you're determined to become the greatest, or you're determined to become one of the greatest? What happens to our relationship?
Well, it suffers.
It does suffer.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you understood that. You were okay with that.
Yeah. And the people that love you, like friends and family, like they know that about you.
Got it.
So they let you be you. And when you reconvene, you pick back up where you left off. Mm-hmm. But make no mistake about it, everything in between is lost, right? So those long-term relationships, the commitment of time of, taking vacation. Like I see a lot of players take vacations with other players that are close friends. And they'll just take vacations just to take vacations, or just hang out just to hang out. Like I never did that.
Why not though? Why didn't you do that?
Well, because when I retire, I didn't want to have to say, I wish I would have done more. I don't want that. I don't want that. You got a lot of people paying their hard-earned money to come watch you perform. It's your job to be in shape. It's your job to be strong enough to perform at that level every single night. And as a competitor, I'm not ducking shit. Like, it's not, oh my God, my back hurts, I'm sore, we got to play Vince Carter and Toronto Raptors tonight. We actually had this happen. We had a game against Toronto in 2000, and Vince was tearing the league up. My back was jacked. But like the perception of that, like what? Kobe's missing the game against Toronto and Vince Carter because my back was really spasming. But people will be like, what? Oh, he's ducking Vince. Excuse me? No, I don't think so. So I would be in the layup line like, okay, there's a lot of days where you can rest and recover. Today ain't one of them. Your back can bother you any other day. That shit ain't bothering me today. Wow. He gonna have to see me today. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
If you're looking at a big investments you got to make, what is the decision-making process there? Do you call? Is there first you do your own research? You take this much time. You call an advisor. Is there a system you follow?
It's pretty simple for me. It's do you understand the business? Is it a business that you can help in some form or fashion? What are the barriers of entry to that business? And then the entrepreneurs themselves, the company itself, right? Do they have a culture that you believe is sustainable? Are these leaders people that you believe in? Are they people that are obsessives? And in turn, have they created a culture of obsessiveness? So I tend to look at those 4 factors, and that's it.
That's big right there, by the way. I don't know if you guys caught that right there. That's pretty massive right there. Same determination. What's your current work schedule look like today?
It's different because I personally am not writing every word of the novels. I am not animating the films. What I have to do now is make sure that the people that we bring in, these obsessives that we bring in, are challenging themselves to do the best job that they think they can do. That's what I'm there for, is for them to constantly look in the mirror and self-assess and challenge themselves. If we have a project and you're saying, okay, I can do that, that's not the project we want. The projects that say, I don't know if I can animate that. I don't know how to write that story. I don't know how to do that. Those are the things we want, because through that curiosity, you'll reach a level that you didn't think was possible. And so running the studio, that's what I'm doing.
You're playing against the Golden State Warriors. Score is 107-109. You guys are close to getting into the playoffs. You know exactly what happens in the game. You go up, you're about to take your shot, and then all of a sudden, boom, Achilles happens, right? He went and hit the free throws, and then you walked off the stage.
Yeah.
You got the surgery done.
When I went in the trainer's room, my kids are in there, and they're looking at you and stuff, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, it's all right. Dad's gonna be all right. It'll be fine. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. It'll be all right. As a parent, you gotta set the example. You gotta set the example. This is another obstacle. This obstacle cannot define me. It's not gonna cripple me. It's not gonna be responsible for me stepping away for the game that I love. I'm gonna step away on my own terms. And that's when the decision was made that, you know what? I'm doing it.